This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent, but this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
Welcome, everybody, again to A Silent War Within. We're excited to have you here. We're excited to be doing what we're doing. Every week we keep having amazing guests on, and this week is no different. I've got Rich Creamer with me. Rich, you are an amazing content creator, but I want to give you the opportunity to tell your story because you've been doing this for a lot longer than I think most people realize. So tell us your origin story, tell us your professional story, tell us all the things about who Rich is.
Yeah, so Rich is just some kid that decided that living in Boston just wasn't the thing for him anymore. I apologize ahead of time. I think the duality of our accents is going to really throw some people off. So I look forward to some of those comments.
Absolutely.
I look forward to some of those comments. But I joined the Navy. I ended up getting stationed here in Hampton Roads, in Virginia Beach, and got hurt while I was serving. Got out and took a look at my skill set that I was able to garner while I was in service. And the only thing that really stuck out was be a cop. I wasn't smart enough for the test for the fire side of the house. So I took all the tests for the police side. Luckily for me, Norfolk PD picked me up. And the rest is really history. I had a phenomenal career. I look back on my career and I'm very lucky of how it all panned out. But that luck, I call it luck. If you ask anybody that knows me, I worked hard for the positions that I was able to have some time in. I spent 6 years working crime-ridden areas in the city, and I loved every minute of it. Like I truly did. Like it wasn't one of them things, as a 20-something-year-old kid, you go, and I can't believe they're paying me to do this. But I did. I enjoyed it, and made a name for myself while I was there, and found myself in investigations not too far after that, mostly violent crime. I spent a long time in gangs, was on a quote unquote gang task force, even though that they didn't want to call it a gang task force at the time. And we did some really cool work. We were able to really drive a lot of the leadership out of the city of Norfolk when it came to criminal street gangs, and I'm really proud of some of the work that I was part of, not only with that team but also, the violent crimes team at Norfolk. I jumped from gangs to homicide, to robicide, I guess you would call it. A little bit of everything. And I found my way back to gangs, and I finished up my time in investigations doing cold case work, and working with a group of premier, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, premier investigators in the violent crime space. But just like anything else, Kevin, with that came a lot of missed opportunities at home, and a lot of things that were missed. Absolutely. And a lot of things that I was hanging on to and needing the validation from my peers, and needing we need you, you're the guy, and then feeling that, and giving up, I don't say giving up family, but missing out on a lot of opportunities, whether I was there physically, mentally, I was checked out. My wife always says, you were there for everything that the kids ever had. And yes, physically I was there, but mentally I was worried about 80 other things that really had nothing to do with what was in front of me. So, a lot of that came with a lot of sacrifice, and luckily for me, I had a mentor who kind of saw, I think we all go through this time in our career where we kind of take a hard right or we take a hard left. And luckily for me, this guy was able to grab a hold of my belt line and say, "You're coming with me." I've seen too many people go down this path of putting themselves and their families last. So we're going to put you first. Found myself in the training division, training, the academy. I was always the guy that was complaining that we were putting out a product that, I wasn't too happy with. So just like anybody else, I jumped in with 2 feet and wanted to put out the best product that I could put my name behind.
Hmm.
Um, and luckily for me, there's still some folks that are with the agency. There are some folks that have moved on to a couple of, three letter agencies that I, had to help in getting them prepared for that type of work. So I look back and I go, man, I really did a halfway decent job, especially when I jump on here with folks
Hmm.
that are like, what's your background? And I started talking about it. I was like, man, I really did a lot of cool shit. Once you start talking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I was reading through some of your background, I was like, wow, this guy has done pretty much all of it. I mean, there's
Yeah,
not a lot that you have not done. So I'm
yeah,
pretty impressed to have you. uh First of all, for those of you listening, Rich is not just a guest, he's somebody that, that communicates with me almost daily, sending me his reels and things like that. And I'm super appreciative of that. And I get to watch his stuff every day. And I just love what you're doing. But how did you move from kind of the law enforcement side to kind of what you're doing now, or even in the department? Because you were part of a critical incident team for a while, right?
yeah, yeah. So in 2016, we had just like unfortunately most agencies, they have that one big event that really impacts a whole organization. And we had a line of duty death that went alongside a officer involved shooting. And I watched, our state has a LEAP program, and I watched the folks from Virginia LEAP kind of come in and do the work on the ground level, with folks that were impacted by this event. And I was like, I really want to get into something like that. So in 2016, I went through the basic group and individual course that ICISF puts out. And what I didn't tell everybody as I was moseying my way through my investigative career is I got my ass back into school and I got my bachelor's degree in sociology because I really wanted to understand people, why they did the things they did, how their, upbringing impacted the person that they become. And, if you ask me why, it was mostly to kind of figure out what the fuck was wrong with me. Like what was going on with Rich? Like it wasn't one of these things where, I want to be a peer. I've got my own shit going on, but I'm on the outside, it appeared that I had everything going for me. I was a guy that, tried to do his best to maintain, be in good shape and eat the right things and do the right things and do all the things that everything that we hear when it comes to wellness. Um, so I found myself kind of in this peer role informally before that even started, Kevin. I was, there were folks that were involved in critical incidents that I felt like I was the only one checking on them. I felt like I was the only one that hey, what are we doing with this person? Why are they on this desk for 10 months? Like,
Right.
can we get them a job? Like, give them a sense of purpose while they're waiting on whatever it is that we're waiting on. And it just kind of evolved into something else. So I told my wife there's a reason why I didn't go to college after high school. Um, and I told her after I finished my bachelor's, I was like, nah, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing it. It ain't happening. And within 3 weeks, I was signed up for my master's for human services counseling. So I got
Yeah.
my master's in counseling around the same time I made sergeant. And the stars aligned. The guy that got that program running in 2016 for us was leaving, was retiring, and was looking for somebody to kind of take the reins. And it was a great program. Like just like many, Kevin, it was very reactive. It was one of them reactive, when the shit hits the fan, call us. We'll help the person or persons. We'll put them through a debrief. We'll follow up. We'll do those things. And if somebody needs that extra level of care, we'll get them to wherever we need to get them.
Right.
So when I took over, I didn't want to completely redesign things, but I think we just needed to landed the plane because we were still building it at the same time. So we landed the plane and we did a couple internal surveys, and usually you know how those go, Kevin. They can go really, really good depending on who's sending them out, or they can go really, really poorly depending on who's sending them out. And I will say, I'm pretty proud at almost a 45% return rate on some of the questions that I was asking about what the folks actually wanted from a wellness program. And I think folks just wanted to get educated. They wanted to educate themselves. They wanted to understand and to normalize some of the things that they were experiencing, and how to kind of navigate them. So we teamed up with IECP and created a resiliency course, a 3-day resiliency course, and kind of put everybody through it while I was there. And it kind of fell into the academy setting where I think it belonged. And we get the recruits for 3 days in the academy, building up their both mind, energy, and connection. And we kind of focus on those 3 things. So even if they don't make the academy, they're leaving with a skill set that's going to help them throughout their whole life.
Right.
So we threw that in there. We were able to throw a couple other initiatives. COVID hit, and we built a gym for folks. We built an outdoor facility for folks. We brought in facility dogs. We were the first facility dog program in the state of Virginia, where we integrated 2 facility dogs with our peer team. And how that goes, Kevin. Like,
Oh yeah.
just when you think you're doing the work and you're doing the good work and you think that your numbers are really, really good, and you can kind of sit back and go, man, we're helping a lot of people. You bring those tools into that type of setting, and our numbers for helping people grew almost tripled,
Wow.
just for having those dogs available. The tip of the spear guys, your team alpha, your canine guys, your SWAT guys, those guys that would, in jest talk a bunch of shit when they
Yeah.
when they see us, it's, you're gonna give me a hug today, all those things. But you'd be surprised at how many of those guys found themselves in my office, talking to a dog.
Absolutely. One of the most enlightening experiences I ever had was I went to the one of the Iowa peer support conferences, and we're in a room. I am out of place. I mean, I to be honest, I'm a bigger guy, have been a bigger guy my whole life. And I'm amongst guys that likely look like you, who are, bearded and tatted and huge dudes.
Right.
And, they start talking through some of their stuff and they're just crying like babies. And it was one of those moments where I was like, everybody deals with this stuff.
Yeah.
Just because you look a certain way or you hold a certain job. And I want to go back because you said something that resonated well with me. You had a very critical incident at your department. You mentioned that,
Mhm.
and you kind of started education a little after that. But one of the things you mentioned was you wanted to figure out what was Rich thinking. How is Rich? So during those critical events, how was Rich?
Rich was really good at putting on the mask, Kevin. On the outside, I gave the appearance that I had my shit together. um, that I was doing all the right things. I was doing all the things that I was telling other people to do. It gave the appearance that, man, this he's got his shit together. He's given me all this great advice. He's given me ways to reframe the way I'm thinking. He's doing all the things. He's got to be practicing that himself.
Hmm.
And in some cases, Kevin, I was. I think when you are in that role and you develop relationships, especially with clinicians locally, it's kind of tough to go, hey, do you got an hour for me? Because I'm the one that's really hurting here, because you don't want to mess with that relationship. So, over periods of time, and, being part of, the IACP, and being part of their wellness committee, and just having the network, the vast network throughout the country, yeah, I was able to tap into certain resources when I thought I needed them. And I thought, in just tapping them when I felt like it, I was quote unquote doing the work. But the reality was I was putting on just one hell of a show, and like
Yeah,
like most, and
like
like
most.
most, I think most of us, we want to believe that we're okay. And I think, Kevin, you probably have found yourself doing the same thing that I've done, which is I tend to measure myself either against the public or people that we know that are really struggling, right? So
Hmm.
if I'm working with a peer that I know that has substance abuse disorder, or severe PTSD, or some stuff going on, I look at them and I go, well, I'm pretty bad off, but I'm not that bad yet, right? So I must not need what they need, or the public calls where we're going to folks that are off their meds and at their worst, right? Because nobody's calling us when they're having a great mental health day, right?
That's
So
right.
so we show up and they're at their worst, and you look at them and you go, well, I'm not hallucinating. I'm not seeing the little green people that person's seeing.
At
I
least I'm
must
not
be.
that.
I'm at least
Yeah.
I'm not that.
Yeah.
And I think as first responders, we have a really bad habit of measuring ourselves up against not only our peers but also the community that we're serving. We can go, don't have those intrusive thoughts, but I do have some on this side. But I'll figure it out. And I think with me, Kevin, is I was putting myself through school to figure it out.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, it takes a major life event to wake us up as first responders. And my major event, unfortunately, was about a year into this role as the peer coordinator, and helping people, and unfortunately burying people. Um, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer, and that diagnosis was the catalyst of my mental health journey. So, like, everything that had occurred from the time I got the call saying that I had cancer, all the way through my upbringing, all that stuff I had been carrying, all that stuff that I refused to put down, all the stuff that I thought was basically what shaped me into the person that I was, and it truly did. That was the catalyst that kind of got the mental health journey rolling, with getting me, into seeing a clinician more regularly, um, and also, keeping tabs on my physical health as well.
Right. So did the cancer diagnosis that thrust you into this, is
Mhm.
this something, and you don't have to share, but
No, no,
is this
no.
something that's still going on, or is this something you're still battling, or how did
No,
that?
so luckily for me, it was 2019, when I was diagnosed. I've had about 5 I did my 5 years of scans. Um, those scans were every 3 months for the first couple years, and then every 6 months towards the end, and then once a year, for the 5th year. But, um, no, luckily, yeah, there's some after effects, some other things that have come from that. But from a standpoint of remission, yeah, I sit in remission from that. I had my left kidney and my left adrenal gland removed, um,
Okay.
and was under some pretty intense surveillance for the first couple years. Like I said, and doesn't matter what a doctor tells you. It doesn't matter what
Hmm.
anybody tells you. When you have to prepare yourself mentally to go in for a scan, that occurs over about a 30-day period, right? So like you got to figure I'm going in every 90 days. So towards the end of getting a scan, I'm now preparing for the next one mentally. So I was in that loop and I knew I couldn't just do it by myself. So it started to do the talk therapy, talk about basically how I felt in the moment. Didn't really kind of take a deep dive, and it made me feel better. It made me reframe. It made me practice the things that I was was preaching, and I got to a place with work that it just wasn't worth the strain on my mental health any longer. So I had the availability to buy back my Navy time. I bought back my Navy time, had about 22 years with Norfolk, and was able to leave with a normal service like pension, um, and kind of really take everything that I was able to do in Norfolk and expand on that at a national level with Lighthouse Health and Wellness, and just based on my relationships that had been garnered throughout the country, whether it be conferences, whether it be um, doing consultant work, whatever it was. I was able
Yeah.
to build a community and do that at a very high level for a number of years and continue to do it. I'm
Well, I
still
think that one thing you said is something that's not talked about enough. There is such a huge mental strain when it's your own physical health. I mean,
yes,
because you're staring down a disease that in our minds, like I'm a bit of a hypochondriac sometimes.
right,
I guess from knowledge is not always power.
right,
Knowledge to me from being a paramedic, I know just enough to be dangerous.
right,
And I know just enough disease processes to think that every cough is lung cancer.
right.
Um, so you're looking at something that many people hear the word cancer and immediately think death. That is such a huge mental load. How did you carry that, kind of having that fear that is just kind of innately in us from the culture that we live in around cancer? How did you carry that, and how did therapy help?
Yeah, so I carried it like anybody would have, I think initially. I think I took it as that death sentence. They classified me as stage 3 just based on the size of the tumor that was on the kidney. Initially, when they removed the cancer, when they removed the kidney and sent it off for processing, um, they were like, "We've never seen anything like this. Like the mutation of everything." And it had to be sent off to yet another. Like it's still being studied at UVA because it
Wow.
was just a strain of renal cell carcinoma that they hadn't seen before. So initially they were like, "Yay, we think we got it, and we think that it was benign, but we're not 100%." And then they came back after the second time, was like, "No, we're gonna have to keep you under our care for the next 5 years or so." So, which was good. I think I needed that. But in the initial diagnosis, I tell this story when I talk about my story. My oldest son had a little bit of a scare that we thought he had bone cancer about 4 years prior to my cancer, and that dude was a rock. Like he was a rock. Me and my wife were a complete mess, but that dude was a rock, and I'll never forget, coming home and having to tell my family the news that I received, and he looked at me, um, deadpan, not an emotion, not a tear in his eye, and he looked at me and he said, "I don't know what the fuck you're crying about, Dad, because you're gonna beat it." Yeah. Like no bullshit.
Yeah.
Like that.
That's a tough kid.
Yeah. Like, but I, I beat myself up. I beat myself up when it comes to my kids, because, I carry a little bit of guilt of not only how they came up, but, you know, my actions or inactions as a father. Um, and that's a rich problem. That's not a them problem. But at some point that was learned. That was learned over a period of his upbringing.
Yeah, but
Um,
I think that as a father and obviously having multiple friends and guests that are fathers, I think one of the things that really is overreaching, really umbrellas a lot of this is that when you have children and you're a working dad, especially in some type of public service area, and we give so much to it and we make this, whether it be a badge or a patch or a uniform, we make it kind of our identity. I think that we do suffer from exactly what you're talking about. I mean,
right.
it's guilt. It's a form of dad guilt. Like we're not there. It's kind of the requirement of our jobs.
Right.
We get so proud of what we do. So I don't think that's just a rich problem. I think that's a, entire service problem that
Sure.
mothers and fathers alike that have to sacrifice uh, to make the ends meet and to make sure that we're proud of what we do. Struggle with that guilt because I certainly do. I mean, I've had the same as you, multiple holidays and family gatherings and things away. Um, and my wife says the same thing. You were always there. Well, was I really though?
Right. Yeah,
I was
physically.
I was sitting in a chair.
Right.
That does not necessarily mean I was mentally there because my mind is a thousand other places. You mentioned the national work you've done with Lighthouse Health and Wellness. So, talk a little bit about what that is, what that does for people, and really how you got involved with it.
Yeah, I got involved with it almost by mistake. I was a customer per se, and kind of got on. It was launched as an app, a customizable app with putting our resources literally in the hands of folks, so they don't have to log into their iDrive. They don't have to go to the city's website. They don't have to search for all this stuff that essentially is theirs. But we put the barrier in place that, well, I don't want to log in because somebody's going to see me log in. Somebody's going to see that I logged in to look at the services or under the EAP. And we put these thoughts in our head that we're way more important than we actually are. We're really not as important as we like to give ourselves credit for. Um, but we created this, or the owner, Joe Ramirez, created this so folks could be in their living room, in, in their driveway, and be able to front forward facing app to where it launches, it has all your resources, but it also has education. It gives folks the ability to take self-assessments and go, okay, today's a bad day, and this is why. And look at some of the education and go, okay, I kind of fit these different criteria, but I also have the ability to reach out to Kevin because I know Kevin is on the peer team, and I trust Kevin, and Kevin's gonna make sure that I get to the next level of care. And that's how it started out, Kevin, was merely just to have the resources available for the people that, number one, you've worked for them, they're yours. And number two, do it at such a palatable price point that it doesn't kill existing wellness budgets, and it doesn't, you're not coming in because you got some big name attached to the app, and it's going to cost $100,000 a year because you're paying that person's salary. We
Yeah.
wanted to really create something to where at the end of the day folks didn't have to worry about the stuff that we worry about, which is, who's gonna see me looking for help, who's gonna see me taking these assessments, and it becomes something anonymous and confidential for folks. And like I said, I started out as a customer. I just so happened to be at one of the conferences that they had a table at, and they had a customer or a potential customer there, and I kind of gave them my spiel, and they took out the city credit card right then and there and ran it, and they became a customer right then and there. And Joe was like, "Hey, when are you retiring?" And the rest is history. I've been with them for about 4 years now, and we've expanded. It's a little bit more. I like to tell people we're a wellness company that has an app. We have the ability to kind of come in and build out wellness programming for agencies as big as um, the Bostons or the Dallases or the San
Mhm.
Franciscos, or help with that, with the build out. Um, and as small as some folks that have a couple auxiliary folks and one or two swarms. So I mean, the scalability is there. We don't try to fit a round peg in a square hole. Like each agency is its own entity, and that's how we treat it. Kind of coming in is, just because something works at your agency, Kevin, doesn't mean it's going to work at mine. So I can't go
That's
in.
right.
I can't go in with best practices every time,
Mhm.
because best
Mhm.
practices isn't applicable for a lot of small agencies. Small
Yeah.
agencies just want the availability of
Yep.
resources. That's it.
Yep. And one of the things that I think this has done for you, is I mean, it's not only, empower you and give you resources and all those type of things, but I think it adds to your resume, as well as, the podcast that you started, which I love, by the way.
Also
Such
by
good stuff.
accident. Also by accident.
How is that by accident, Rich? Tell us the story of the podcast. I'm very interested now. I know this didn't happen by accident, but tell me your accident.
No, it's totally by accident, dude. Like, 4 years in the space, seeing the highs, seeing the lows, seeing people come and go, seeing people kind of start out as this big firecracker. I'm going to do this, my program this, or my this, or I'm gonna coach, or I'm gonna do whatever. And like I said, I've been in doing this for almost a decade. From the ground up. I've built programs. I've worked with agencies. I've worked with multiple organizations, and unfortunately, I got to a point, Kevin, where I just got tired of it. I got tired of seeing um, just the exploitation of lived experience. I really like, and that's what it has come down to. The industry is an industry, and I understand that, and I understand that just like anything else, any tools that you use as a paramedic, any tools that I use as a cop, that's it comes down to a business. Unfortunately, wellness has become such a trending business opportunity for folks that are leaving their agencies. Um, that they're taking, their time at a place that they went to get help, or their sobriety, and or whatever it is. They're coming in and taking pieces that they've learned throughout their journey, and selling it as some new wild thing. And it's really not. It's really
It's not.
not. It's not there's nothing new. And I'll say, the wellness stuff isn't nuclear physics. Like, it really isn't at the end of the day. But we tend to want to nuke it every chance we get as first
Sure.
responders. um, where the reset was born. I think that, not only the industry needed a reset, I think organizations needed a reset, and I think the individual needs a reset. And what I try to do in my 35 to 45 minutes with the reset is to remind folks, like you have control. Like, if you're waiting for the organization to come get you, that ain't happening.
Mm-mm.
So
They're
you,
not coming.
so you need to do what you need to do to get yourself well. And here are some of the ways that you can do that. Here are some of the barriers. And there are barriers. There's no denying that, but they're man-made barriers. Nobody is like literally saying, "Hey, if you do this, this is what's going to happen." I think we, as first responders, we fill in the blanks. If we don't know, we will
Mhm.
fill in the blanks with what we want to
Mhm.
believe. You know, we hear that Kevin went to go get help, right? So the the scuttlebutt or the rumor mill will get rolling. And well, did you hear Kevin's going to get fired because he's gotten help? Well, do we know that for a fact? But by the time Kevin gets back, we're waiting to walk you out with your box and all your shit. And it's the further sometimes it's the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah,
because Kevin went to go get some help on his own. There was no major incident. There was no policy violations. There was none of that going on. Kevin just got to the point where he had enough and raised his hand and he got some help and he came back.
So why do you think we get so crucified for that? Because that's what I feel like it is. It's a corporate crucifixion when you go to get help at some organizations. So why is it so stigmatized by everybody in the organization? Like you said, this has been around forever. This is not rocket science. There's nothing super difficult with this, other than just making yourself available and doing it. So why do we get so chastised for getting help?
Well, I think, we created the culture, Kevin, whether that be EMS, whether that be police, whether that be fire, right? So we've created this unwritten rule that if we show just the tiniest bit of vulnerability as a person, then we're not capable of doing our job. And if we show just that little bit of empathy, then we're not capable of doing our job. And, I kind of blame, and you can listen to any one of my episodes. It comes back down to trust and connection. And if there's no trust within the agency, I don't care how many programs you got, nobody's going to use them. And if they believe that every time they go to use something within the agency as it pertains to mental health, wellness, whatever you're calling it within your agency, and that comes with the unfortunate wearing of the scarlet letter when you get back. Why would anybody want to use that? You know what I mean? I think, Kevin, we celebrate losses so well in our industry. We celebrate the losses. We celebrate loss of life. We celebrate when somebody has the downfall. We watch from the corner and we say to one another, we knew that was going to happen, right? We sit and we point and we like to celebrate somebody's downfall. But what we don't do very well is when somebody actually raises their hand and gets the help that they need, whether it be just mental health or whether it be a combination of mental health and substance use disorder. We don't bring them and we don't put our arm around them and say, hey, we're proud of you. I'm glad to have you back. And at the end of the day, they're a better version than what they were when they were there backing you up. And that's why I kind of, when I have this talk with folks, I bring this up and they say, well, it's really not our business, Rich. It's really none of our business. That's a personal issue. And I'm like, oh, so it's none of your business. So it's none of your business when this person is in the stack getting ready to hit a door on a high risk search warrant, and that that they're sitting at a 0.14, but you don't want to say anything.
It sounds like my business at that point, for sure.
Does it not sound like? Would that not be
that would definitely be something,
right? So when I put it in a tactical sense, or if I put it in the actual job description sense, now all of a sudden it's a problem, because I'm telling you right now, if I was in the bus with you and I did something way off base as it pertained to a tactic or how I whatever it was, you'd be the first one to pull me aside after that call and be like, hey, I don't know what you got going on, but that's not how we do business, right? We don't do the same thing when we see somebody struggling. And that's where I sit, and that's where the reset was born. Was we have to do a better job of having those difficult conversations. We can do it all day long. We do it literally 12 hours a day. We go to somebody else's house and we have a tough conversation with them and we get them the help that they need, but we can't do it to the person sitting left or right to us. And that's a major problem. And like I said, I understand that there are barriers, but those are man-made barriers, and they're barriers that are put into place by fragile leaders.
That's exactly right. I'm a leader in an organization, and I constantly tell people the same thing. Like, trust and connection is everything. Um, I'll never forget sitting in my first. I'd been a leader for about 3 months, and I was sitting in my big first corporate meeting.
Right.
All the big wigs sitting up there, and and we were having really great success at retention and recruiting. And when I first came in, and I'm not tooting my own horn, it's a team of us. When I first came in, we had like 40, I think it was 47% staffing. So we were at a 53% vacancy.
Mm.
And within 3 months, we were at a 90% projected staffing field. And they were like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? And it's just super simple. And they were so surprised to hear me say, I go and spend time with my people every day. That's how I start my day. And you could have heard a pin drop in that room, because there was such a disconnect between leaders and the people they were leading. And they just could not believe that we were spending our precious time with the people. But I think that's a big part of it. And that's a big part of how you gain that trust with someone, is to sit with them and know what their kids' names are.
Yeah.
Uh,
I say this all the time, like, because we're responsive in nature as first responders, right? We're responsive in nature. It's a little bit uncomfortable being with somebody when they don't need anything. And I think that's the biggest secret. That's the biggest secret to peer support. Everybody thinks that peer support is this thing that you have to you have to hit a certain criteria, like you got to fit the criteria to go talk to somebody. And that's not what we did, at least in my time, with Norfolk and kind of overseeing their program. Is we were there for the good things. We showed up for the good things. We showed up for calls that we probably had no business showing up for, because there was no need for us to be there, right?
yeah.
By the letter of the protocols and the procedures. But we would just be the faces that people just got to know, that okay, this person literally actually gives a fuck.
Yeah.
Legitimately
That's it.
gives a shit. So
That's it.
when the bad thing did happen, and you saw my face walk into the squad bay, or walk into a roll call, or walk, at a crime scene, it wasn't, oh fuck, peer support's here. Oh, they're gonna make me talk to this guy.
Yeah.
They're gonna make me, I don't want to talk to. It was more along the lines of, fuck, thank God Rich is here, because now I know he's
Take
going
a
to,
breath.
yeah, I can take a breath. He's gonna ask, because I had a protocol, like, hey, how are you? Are you good? Do you need food? Do you need what? Like, take care of like those things first. Do you need me to call home and let them know that you're good? Like, what do you need me to do for you? And just like most first responders, they go like this. They go, well, I don't know, because nobody's ever asked me.
Hmm.
Nobody's asked me how I am. And I kidded with you before we got on here, because that was the first thing you asked me. Hey, how are you doing? And I kidded.
Hmm.
I was like, well, I'm good, but nobody's really ever asked me that.
Yeah.
It's usually the other way around. Like, usually I'm asking how they're doing. So I think there's something to be said about that. I think, we lose, and that's why I say, Kevin, it's not rocket science. Like, if you know how to be a good person, just be a good person.
Just be
That's
a
it.
good person.
That's it. At the end of the
And
day.
and part of it is about, when I ask that question to you or my people or whoever it is, I genuinely care about the response. If you'd have said, not having a good day, I'd have said, hey man, let's talk. We can reschedule whatever we need to do.
Right.
Just be a genuinely good. It doesn't take much. I mean, we keep harping on it. It's not rocket science, but you have to understand also that we live, and even though you and I use it for the good, we live in this generation that is constantly in a comparative mindset.
For sure.
Uh, we have all the social media tools that are at our fingertips. And I even fell into the kind of rut of, well, look at what so and so's got. Look at how good they're doing. When in reality, that might not be the case.
No,
Um,
no.
I
And
can paint my Facebook life to look however I want it to
we
look.
all do.
am I going to tell you that I argued with my ex-wife and my daughter's doing all this, unruly behavior and I'm dealing with all this stress at home? Well, of course not. But when somebody like you who has the 24 years worth of files, if you will, comes in and goes, "Hey man, how are you really?" It and I see it almost every day when I come in and say that and genuinely sit down and care. Somebody's gonna go, "Well, and it's that minute of self-examination,
And and
and
and,
that makes all the difference.
and I think that, coupled with the ability not only to meet them, and I have this saying, meet your people at their pace, not just their pain, right? So like, we want to come in and we want to fix immediately. Like, if I get the call or if I get the text saying, "Hey, Kevin's having a shit day," he's got some relationship issues going on, whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? My first inclination as a peer should not be, well, I'm going to fix it. I'm gonna go talk with Kevin and I'm gonna nip this thing in the bud in 20 minutes. And if we're going into those type of meetings, then we're no better than the administration that signed the check to get us up and running. We as a peer, we as peers, or peer teams across the United States, have to do a better job of not wanting to just check the box when we're checking on people. Like, yeah, figure out where they're at. They may not they may not be ready to talk to you right off the bat, but that doesn't mean you stop. That doesn't mean you just chalk it up as, well, Kevin said he's good, so I'm just gonna, let it be. And if he needs something, he knows how to get in touch with us. If we,
I think we've over normalized, "I'm fine, I'm good," all
Mm.
those sayings that we just throw out without thinking about it. How do you get past the person who comes in and says, "I'm good, I'm fine,"
you follow
from
that
a
up.
peer?
Yeah, I think you follow it up with an open-ended question. Like, if you've done your due diligence and you know the person that you're talking to, like if I knew Kevin and knew that you had an ex-wife or you had a child, that would be my next question. Hey, what are things like with your daughter?
Mhm.
And
That's
now
exactly right.
and now it goes from I'm fine to, well, let me tell you what the fuck's going on with my daughter. Yeah, this is what's going on with my daughter, or this is what's going on with my ex-wife, or this is what's going on at
And
home.
I'm so glad you didn't catch me on Monday. We'd had a long conversation.
But that's the thing is, there's a difference between sitting in a 40-hour course and getting the certificate and saying that you're a fuck peer,
Yep,
and then
yep.
actually taking those skills and putting them to work. Because we see it. You know as well as I do, there's folks that want the certification. They want to say that they're helping. They want to say that they're part of something, and that's great. But we have to be able to read the body language, read what that "I'm fine" really means, and
Mhm,
follow it up with those open-ended questions. Sooner or later, they're gonna give us that hook, and then once we get that hook, then we use it to our advantage. It's no different than me sitting in the box with somebody that committed a crime. I'm not, if I sat there and was like, "You need to do this," or "You need to tell me what happened," and well, what's going to happen, right? Where they're going to fold their arms
they're
and
gonna shut
they're
down,
going to
yeah.
sit back, and it's going to be no different when you're trying to help fix a peer. If I go in saying you need to do this and you need to do that, they're going to be like, "Yeah, well, fuck you," like, I'm not doing that.
How have you personally found it successful to approach somebody like you or I? You spent 24 years in, I've been in EMS for 20 years. How do you approach somebody who's seen the absolute worst side of humanity and now you're there on a real bad day? Because, unless you're making a habit of it, the bad days are what we show up the most for. We love a bad day.
Yeah.
Um, but how do you approach that person that has like been through the ringer?
What's worked for me? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I think you call
Yeah.
them out on their bullshit.
I love that direct approach. That
Listen,
is it.
listen. Peer support doesn't always have to be touchy feely. It doesn't always have to be, "Hey, how are you?" I can come at it a couple different angles. Like, if I know that I'm kind of got an eye on Kevin, and I know what I'm going to be met with is, uh, I'm fine and the arms folded and all this other shit, I'm gonna take my approach with Kevin a little bit differently than I would, maybe a 1 or 2 year guy. I'm gonna come at Kevin like, hey, I don't know if you've noticed, but this is what I've noticed, and I'm coming with facts. I'm not coming with how I feel. I'm not coming with, well, Kevin, this is how I feel. I'm coming with, Kevin, you've showed up late for the past 3 weeks. You're banging out every Monday. I know that some things are going on at home just based on what I'm seeing at work and the way that you're treating your people, and you're getting behind on things. Like, I've just given you evidence. Like,
Facts. Yeah.
here, nothing. Like, I'm not coming with, this is how I feel. No, I'm coming with facts. And I
Mhm.
and I use this model, and I use it to my advantage. I've got to identify one thing, and that's a shared goal. How can I work with Kevin to get to that shared goal? First, I got to make sure that I give Kevin the ability to retort everything that I'm saying, and not in a adversarial way, but like, hey, this is what's happening. Tell me why. Tell me what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, Kevin's going to be like, well, this is what's going on. I'm working 18 hours a day. I'm working part time. I'm working this. I'm doing this, doing this. It's never enough. And
Yeah.
you're burnt
But
out.
that's
And you're
but
burnt
that's
out.
what I wanted. I thought uh, when I had that question on my mind, I thought I knew the answer from listening to your stuff and kind of the way you approach things.
Yeah.
But I wanted to pull that out because people think of peer support and people think of wellness, mental health, whatever, catchphrase you want to put on it, as surely touchy feely. And I'm not the guy that's going to react to touchy feely.
No.
I need you to come to me just like you just did, direct, and say what you need to say and get it out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. Over the course of some years, I've come to enjoy some of the touchy feely stuff. I have no
Sure.
problem admitting that. I'm a pretty emotional guy.
Right.
I tend to lean toward the softer side. However, when you're coming at me with something that you know is wrong with me, I need you to be upfront with me.
Yeah. A thousand
Because
percent.
I've already walked through the mud back there. I don't need you to give me any more.
Right.
Um,
Sugarcoating it doesn't get you anywhere but backwards.
yeah.
Sugarcoating it then becomes making it okay for that behavior to be going on.
And I think that is one thing to pull out is that like peer support is not a linear system. Sometimes people are going to react differently to the touchy feely. Sometimes they need the everyday interaction. Sometimes they need somebody to shoot it straight and just say what you have to say.
Yeah. And sometimes you bring a dog. and let
That's right.
and
That
let
helps too.
and let the dog work for you, and
That's exactly right.
let the dog kind of bring the what I like to call, we go through our lives and our careers like this, right? So we throw that jab out all the time. I'm good, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Um, Sometimes we need different tools to kind of go from this to kind of lower our guard a little bit. And then if we can lower this by somebody sitting across from me who has no problem doing this, it's showing that little bit of vulnerability and saying, hey, I feel where you're at. I've experienced those things that you're experiencing. And I know that if you don't get ahead of it, this is the route it's gonna take you.
Yep. Yep. So Rich, we ventured way off script, which is what I totally anticipated for this. I was ready for this.
Right.
I was so excited about today because you're just an awesome creator, awesome guy. Everything I listen to of yours, I just love.
I appreciate
Uh,
that.
you are hitting the nail on the head in so many different areas. But I want you to tell us if you had one message for our listeners, what is it?
It's never too late to get help. Don't fall into the trap that, oh, well, I'm going to be retiring soon and this is all going to go away. I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you now, as somebody that sits before you, 4 years retired, that the wheels came off in year 2. And I was looking for exit strategies. And you would have never known it. You would have never have known it. You would have looked at me as saying, there's a guy that's out there that's helping people, that he's out there, he's doing the thing. And I had found myself, a really good friend of mine, Doug Bonda, had the best saying, and I will take this saying everywhere I go. You go from 130, 140 miles an hour of doing the hard shit every single day, whether that's on a bus, saving people's lives, whether it's running down criminals, whatever it is that you're doing as a first responder, it's 130, 140 miles an hour. And
That's
then
right.
and then when you finally get to the point where it's time to retire, in that first year, it's the honeymoon phase. It's, "Man, this is great. I get to do what I want. I do a little consultant work over here and get a nice little check over here, and I'm getting the pension just to wake up in the morning. This is awesome." And then you realize really quickly, like I did, everybody else has to go to work in my house or go to school. And at the time, I had a kid in college and one getting ready to go to college, and my wife, working at the high school. And I found myself literally folding clothes, Kevin, going, "How did I go from what I at that body of work that we
Mhm.
talked about earlier on the podcast and what you're alluding to as the resume? How did I go from that to folding clothes?"
Yeah, that
And
that's challenging.
your brain slowing down, and now all the stuff that you thought you had unpacked and stuff that you hadn't even thought about in years starts creeping back into your thoughts. So you find ways to get back to 130 miles an hour, and whether that's, you know, because we're agents of chaos, maybe I say something inappropriate and get my wife stirred up. Maybe I start a fight. Maybe I, you know, don't do the things that I should be doing to garner some chaos. So I start the chaos and we spin things up again, and that brain goes back to 120, 130, and we're happy there. And like I said, I got to a point where, you know what? This isn't working. Like, I don't like this. I don't like my brain being able to show me all the things that I thought I got rid of. And like I said, I'm open, I'm honest. Like, the exit strategy was something that was, I had long talks with myself as to
Mhm.
being better off, not here and not with the family, because I felt it was burdensome. I was worse off in retirement than sometimes that I was in doing the job. So, I tell people it's never too late and it's never finished. If somebody sits there and
Yeah,
tells
yeah.
you that their journey is over and they're healed, they're a liar. They're a liar, and don't
That's
fall for it.
lies from the pits of hell.
Yeah, like, literally, like, anybody that's trying to sell you on, sell you on whatever it is that they're selling, and I'll just leave it at that. That
Mhm.
because they've navigated a journey and they feel like they're healed and they can help you, you know, just watch, just vet them properly. That's all I ask. Anybody that is so adamant that they've become healed, um, that's a problem for me, because I think we all are doing the best we can to become, that 1% better every day. And if you're telling me that you've already done it, I've got a problem. I've got a real problem with that.
Agreed, brother. Man, that's great advice. So tell us where we can find all things rich and everything that you're involved in. That's a whole episode by
Yeah, yeah,
itself
yeah.
as
So
much as you're involved in.
So I'm on LinkedIn professionally. Like I said, I fell into the social media thing by accident. I had the pseudonym, I had the fake name, I had the fake handle on Instagram for the longest time. And a buddy of mine, I don't know if you follow him or not, but you need to take a look at Kenny Mitchell Jr. and Operation Yellow Tape. You need to take a look at the Trauma Behind the Badge guys as well.
Yep.
You, you,
Love those
you
guys.
take a hard look at those guys. Um, but I found myself, ready to put myself out there. I was always doing the work. I was always putting out, articles and great posts professionally on LinkedIn. And, Kenny pulled me over to the side and was like, people need to see you. They need to see your face. They need to see what's behind those words. And, I did that about midway through the month of October. And here we are in February, and that podcast is taken off, man.
Yeah.
It's taken off in my social media, Instagram. All you got to do is type in Rich Creamer. I'll come up. There's not very many Rich Creamers out there.
No, it's a one of a kind
It's a
name.
one of a kind
What
name.
I found.
Yes. But pretty much all the socials, Facebook, Insta, TikTok. I'm kind of all over the place, man. And
Yeah.
Kevin, I appreciate you giving me the time and really focusing on the fact that I'm just not one of these guys that fell out of the sky.
No, you are not.
one of
No,
the
you are not.
one of these guys that just kind of fell out of the sky, put a camera in front of him and a microphone, and away he went.
No.
I think I really wanted to get that point across, Kevin, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that on your platform.
Man, you are amazing. And, as we close up, Rich, you've been an awesome guest. I appreciate you coming on and just giving me a little piece of your heart and showing me a little bit of vulnerability. And I absolutely love the conversation we've had. I would absolutely love to invite you back on later to even explore more because you're such a wealth of information. I get as much from this, guys, as any of our guests do because my journey is not over. My healing is not done and likely will never be, as Rich alluded to. So getting to pull from somebody who's had so much experience and done so much is just as beneficial for me. So I'm appreciative for what you've done in your life and your career and sharing it with me. So thank you, buddy. I really do appreciate that.
No, Kevin, like I said, and this is something that I never did really, like with the podcast thing, getting on other people's podcasts. I was always either the guy behind the microphone with
Yeah.
Fiber behind the badge, or whether it's talking or instructing. That those are other things that I don't really talk about, Kevin. Like, you really got to take a deep dive on me to kind of figure out, like, oh shit, this guy has been doing
Yeah.
this. I've been a keynote or a speaker for a number of years, but
Hmm.
because my marketing is just word of mouth, it's not something that I just put out
Yeah.
for consumption of everybody. But they can also hit up the responderreset.org. It's a website that I just developed, kind of just laying out some of the things that I can do for agencies from a training standpoint and even a speaking standpoint. You can drop in and send me an email for your agency or for yourself. Like, there's been some folks that some things have resonated on the podcast that they just want to talk to me about, and I'm good with that. And I think I've connected enough throughout the country that I can get them wherever they need to go, and pretty
Yeah.
fast. So, um, no, it's been good. It's been good, Kevin. I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate your platform. I appreciate what you're doing, and I also, like I said, appreciate the fact that you noticed. Like I said, I'm just not a flash in a pan type of guy.
No, no, I typically go down the rabbit hole on my guests, and you were one that I super enjoyed because there was so much there. So I appreciate everything that you've done. And as we close out, guys, you can always find us on the same places you can find Rich, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We post our short videos on YouTube, but we also stream on YouTube. Every Friday, you get a new episode. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a few smaller podcast platforms that go around the world. And like Rich said, we've really had good responses to everything we've done. We're so appreciative for you guys and your interaction. And we have a peer support team that works behind me. We have researchers and things like that. So you can always reach out to us for help. And we refer many people that need help. We're as connected as any other platform that you might find, and we can get you the resources that you need. We appreciate you guys. And as we close out the show, we always say the same thing every week: be safe, take care of your mind, and we will talk soon. Rich, thank you again, and we'll hopefully see you next time.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.